Hey YouTubers, well I got another review for you today. This is a SWI Power 3000 watt 12 volt power inverter, and I'm going to just go ahead and pull everything out of here. Alright, so I got everything unboxed, and in just first glance I gotta say I'm pretty impressed with it. It looks like a really nice quality inverter. The housing and everything is really solid. It's not flimsy at all. Usually on this back panel you can usually push on it and flex it. This one here is just a super solid outer housing. And then here on the front you've got this little LCD display. I think that's pretty sharp. And then it tells right here on the front that whenever you get different audible beeps, that it means different things. And I'll go ahead and read them off to you. It says alarm sound, you get one beep, and that means system working. You get two beeps, low DC voltage alarm. 3 beeps, high DC voltage alarm. 4 beeps, overload alarm. 5 beeps, over temperature alarm. 6 beeps, low AC voltage alarm. So I thought that was pretty neat. A lot of the times you don't see that on a lot of these inverters. Some of them will give you like a low voltage alarm and all that, but that's pretty neat to be able to, you know, troubleshoot it just with the amount of beeps that it goes off. So thought that was pretty neat. And then one of the main things that I noticed was right here on the end where your terminals are. I don't know how well you guys can see this right in here, but these terminals are very, very beefy. They're a lot bigger than most of the inverters that I've seen, and if you're wondering why that's important, you know, a lot of times when you're hooking up your lugs onto your terminals, you know, you can, when you're tightening it up, I know you're not supposed to put a whole lot of power into it, but sometimes on the cheap inverters, when you tighten them up, you can feel them flex. And these here are very, very strong. I mean, there's hardly any flex, and that metal is really thick there. And the actual terminal bolt itself is really thick. In fact, I checked it a while ago, and it used a 13 millimeter socket to take that off. So if that gives you an idea how big it is. As far as the fans, you got 2 cooling fans on this end, and they are variable speed fans. So on this end of the inverter, you've got your 220 volt plugs there. And then right here, you have your hardwiring area where if you want to hardwire this in. And then right there is your grounding screw. And then over on this side, it has your switch. As you guys know, I'm more old school. I like the old time switches rather than the new buttons and stuff that they're putting on the newer inverters. And then right here, you've got a spot to put your category 5 cable, plug it in right in there. And then they give you a remote that has pretty much just another on and off switch where you can control the inverter and turn it on and off. It looks like it's going to do the job. It does feel like it's of good quality. And then you have your power LED light right there, and then there is an alarm red light right there. We'll see what all that looks like here in a few minutes. So I told you guys in the very beginning of the video that this was a really sturdy case, and if you flip it over on the bottom, this is one thing that I did notice is usually on a lot of your inverters they're just a flat panel here on the bottom, and they feel kind of flimsy. Well, this one here has got some ridges in it, and man, there is no flex to this thing. The case on it really does feel bulletproof. I mean, it's made out of aluminum. It does weigh 13.2 pounds, and I'm going to get some measurements for you from end to end. Right here, the furthest point that's sticking out, all the way to the terminals is about 19.25 inches from side to side, and front to back, it's about 6.5 inches. So I gotta say it's a little bit smaller of a footprint from front to back. Usually most of them are about 8 inches, and this one's only 6.5. So it's pretty compact. And then the height is right at about 3 3/8. Now in the box they give you your positive and negative cable, and they measure 19 3/4 inches from the end of the lug to the other end of the lug. and it looks like it's a number 6 wire. Don't hold me to that, but I gotta say, I've never seen a company where they tripled the wire, but I do have to say, you know, that might be enough to be able to power this. A lot of times whenever you get Chinese inverters, they'll only have like 2 strands of this same diameter, and you know, it's not enough. So hopefully by them adding that 3rd strand of that wire in there, putting that lug on the end of there like that, just crimping them all together, hopefully it'll be enough wire to supply that much power to the inverter. We'll see. We'll test it out. So in the next little baggie that they give you, they give you 10 of these flat bladed 40 amp fuses. So if you blow one, you'll have to open the case, pull those old fuses out and replace it with these. Then they give you 2 ring terminals. I assume that's for your grounding lug over here. And it also comes with 4 of these little rubber isolators to go up underneath the bottom of the feet where it's going to be mounting. And you can just see that it slides right there in that groove. And then when you put your screw going into that, it gives you a little bit of cushion there. And then last, it comes with a nice color instruction manual. It has some pretty good illustrations in there showing you how to hook it up, and it tells you pretty much about the inverter and the cooling fans, and just, you know, answers pretty much all your questions. And it looked like it was pretty decent. Now some of the print is a little bit small, but I was still able to read it. So the battery that we're going to be using today is a Redodo 200 amp hour. This is the Plus model with the 200 amp BMS. And like I've said in other videos, this is my go-to battery. This thing is a Haas. It's been running a 12,000 BTU unit air conditioner all summer long. And anyways, I just took it out of commission for a few days to do some testing. And so I'm going to show you how to hook everything up. Like I said in the beginning of the video, the terminals on this thing are really big. It takes a 14 millimeter socket to loosen the nuts there on the end. And I was curious to see what size these were on the battery, and they're 13. So to give you an idea, you know, these are pretty big terminals. And so the way that you hook everything up is very simple. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on hooking it up because most of you guys know, but for the ones that you don't, you just put your lug on there, and then next what you want to do is put your flat washer on, then your split washer or lot washer, whatever you want to call it, and then you want to put your nut on the very end. If you're installing this permanently, you definitely want to make sure that you use a fuse on the end of your cable. All right, guys, so we got all the wiring hooked up, all but the exception of one, and everything's all nice and tight, all but this one here. But before you touch them together, just take this resistor. This is just a ceramic resistor. I'll put a link in the description down below. These are like 10 bucks for like 5 of them. What you want to do is just hold that and touch the end of the battery terminal there. And I like holding it on there for about 30 seconds. And what this does, it prevents a spark from happening, because whenever you hook the battery up to the inverter, there's capacitors on the inside of this inverter that have to charge up with power in order for it to work. And whenever you just hook the battery cables or the inverter cables straight to the battery, that sends a surge of power right down into that inverter, and it can damage those capacitors. So just spend a few extra bucks and buy you some of these resistors, and it limits the flow of power going into the inverter. And anyways, like I said, I'll put a link down in the description. They're really cheap, but it prevents a spark. So I'll show you and prove it to you. You can see right there, there was no spark whatsoever. And then what you want to do is go ahead and tighten this one up. And I like using a screwdriver to tighten the battery terminals up. That way you're not using a ratchet and going from side to side, and there's no chance of you shorting this out and, you know, you create a really big spark. All right, so I'm fixing to turn on the power here. Then you can see the display automatically, that gives you one audible beep to let you know that it's working properly. And then you can see the display right there. The input voltage is at 13.1. The battery is not fully charged. I just let the solar panels charge it as much as I could today. It was kind of cloudy, so it didn't get to a full charge yet. you can see right there, it says it's at 60 hertz, is exactly where it needs to be. And then it's at 122 volts output. So that is right there where that needs to be as well. A lot of people think that, you know, 110 is where it needs to be, but right there at 120, 122, that's completely fine. And then as far as the lower number right there, it says 0 watts, and that is your output watts. There's nothing plugged into it, and there's no power going out of it, so that's why it's reading 0. And then you can see right there, there's a little battery, and it's got like a little indicator on there. And then also there's a little spot right there in the middle where it says code, and I guess a number would pop up there, and if it tells you right here on this little chart code, and it tells 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and it tells you the different it's basically like a little troubleshooting guide right there. And not only does it tell you the code, but like I said before, it gives you audible beeps, so that's kind of neat. And you know, that way if you're away from the unit, you can actually hear the beeps. And then when you come in here, if you didn't hear how many times it beeped, you can look right there and it tells you the trouble code. So that is pretty cool. And then you can see the light, the power light here on the end is lit up blue. Most of them are green, so blue is a little bit of a change. And then here is your remote. So that the way that this remote works is you need to set the inverter to the off position, and then you go ahead and plug it in right here on the side, and then plug it into the inverter. And then when you hit the on button, even though this is in the off position, it turns the inverter on. And so if you mount this in a remote location and you're not next to the inverter to hit the switch, you can just hit the remote button right here, and it turns it on and off. So that way it's not using you know, idle power. And I think, you know, just a normal running power for this thing just at idle is like 9 watts. So very efficient. So that's one thing I do like about this inverter. But the remote is really neat. I'm pretty impressed with it. And you know, it'd be easy to mount. All you do is just cut out a little hole right here. Then you got a screw hole there on the top and one there on the bottom, and then it just mounts up. It has like a rough textured finish here on the top. And if you wanted to upgrade this category 5 cable, I'm sure you could add a longer one if you wanted to. I mean, they sell this on Amazon pretty cheap. So you know, if you've got a longer run where you want to put it, there you go, just extend the cable. All right, so one of the things that's kind of a con for me is right here where your plugs are. If you've got a plug-in that's like this, that comes out at a 90-degree and goes down, whenever you try to plug it in over here, it kind of runs into this hardwire connection area. And then the same thing when you plug it in over here. But I can get it squeezed in there. It's just not seated at the very bottom all the way. There's a little bit of a crack there at the bottom. And the only reason I'm even using this cord in this receptacle is this is how I use to test with my oscilloscope. And what this is just a 120 volt receptacle, and then I've got it mounted in a plastic box, and I took and drilled a hole on each side, and that way I can get in there and probe it with the oscilloscope, and that way it gives me something nice and safe to hold, and you know, makes it as safe as possible when doing these tests, because I don't want to get shocked. So anyways, if you've got something that's got that 90-degree plug on it, you'll have to come up with something so it doesn't hit down here. All right, so I have the inverter turned on, I've got the oscilloscope hooked up, and I've got it probed on this side, and then all I have to do is probe it on this side, and you'll see the sine wave pop up, and you can see right there that is a nice clean sine wave. There is a little bit of distortion right there at the bottom, but it's for the most part it's really clean. I gotta say, it's as clean as the household power that comes in your house from the power company. And you can see right there on the bottom it says the frequencies is 59 hertz, so that's close enough. It's supposed to be at 60. And then right here on the front of the inverter, it's reading 60. So there's probably a little bit of a discrepancy in there between the two. And so that's close enough between 59 and 60. You're good. And anyways, we're going to do some testing now. And this is the the sine wave, there's no load whatsoever. We'll test the sine wave once we put a load on it and see just how it looks. All right, guys, so we went ahead and plugged in a space heater down below, and I've got it hooked into this watt meter. And if you're interested in the watt meter, I've got a link in the description down below. And now it's stabilizing down to about 1448, 49 watts, somewhere in there. There's your voltage. It's 121.7 volts at 60 hertz. And so you can see right there. And then there is the sine wave. The sine wave actually cleaned up. The distortion that it had, it's went away once we put a load on it. So, you know, that's pretty awesome. I mean, it's really clean sine wave. And so everything is reading out really good here on the meter. So gotta say, so far I'm pretty impressed. But yeah, right now you're at 1446, 47 watts. We're gonna take and unplug this, plug it into the bottom receptacle, and then we're gonna plug the other space heater on top and see if I can run two and really put this thing through its paces. And then I plugged in the second space heater into the watt meter, and right now it's just turned on, so it's only using 1.8 watts. So we're going to turn it on and we'll see if it shuts down or not. It's already set on high, so it's putting out 450, 800, 900, 1000, 1200, 1350, 14, 15, 16, 17. Oh, it's beeping. So there you go, guys. I mean, this thing put out 1430 something from the first heater and 17 surge on the second space heater, and it started beeping, letting you know that you had went above those 3000 watts. But you see it running for a few seconds while it was climbing, and so it lets me know that it was definitely able to run, you know, that 3000 watts. I mean, that was a pretty good load on it. That's more than what it's advertised. So let's see if I can find something a little bit less wattage that's closer, just under that 3000 mark, and we'll do a load test with it. I just wanted to see if it would sound the alarm and kind of shut itself down, but I went ahead and turned it off. I didn't want nothing to catch on fire because I am really pushing the limits to this. But if you paid attention, the oscilloscope there still stayed nice and clean, and the oscilloscope was distortion free. I mean, literally, once you put a load on this thing, it seemed like it just really cleared that little bit of distortion that was in the sine wave up. So I gotta say, you know, it's pretty impressive. So let's try something else out. All right, so we've got here on the bottom, this is the space heater down there in the floor, and then we went and found a hair dryer, and we've got it plugged into the watt meter. We're gonna try it on low first, and then we'll move it up to high. But right now that space heater's down there. I think it's at 1435, somewhere in there. So let's kick this on. So that's 183 watts. Let's kick it up some more. That's 510 watts, 11 watts. And let's kick it all on high. 900 watts. $902. So 1435 and approximately plus 900 watts. There you go. That's a nice load test on this inverter. And we'll test it out and see if the cables get hot. All right, guys. So down below, we've got the space heater plugged in, and then we have the hair dryer plugged in, and you can see the heater's at 1435. This is at 904, and then you can see the oscilloscope right here, and it's a nice clean sine wave. And then now what I'm going to do is I have a thermal camera, and I'm going to cut the lights, and that way we can look right here and see if the inverter's hot, check the temperature on the cables and all that. So let me get right to it. So you can see right there in the middle where my finger's pointing, the middle of the case of the inverter, it's about 91 degrees. And then over here on the table, it's about 77 degrees. And then over here at the cables, it shows there at about 120, 121. And that's right there at the terminals where it bolts up to the inverter. So you can see that the cables are a little bit warm, and it's about 122 degrees, 123 degrees right there at the terminals on the battery. And you can see my finger pointing right there. Let's check the other terminal, and you can see the same for it. It shows it's at 122, 123 degrees. And then right here on the inverter itself, you can see the two lugs right there. Right there it's reading 130 degrees. And then if you back up a little bit, if you look right there on the inverter is pretty cool. It says it's about 93 degrees right here on this end where I'm pointing my finger. And 90, 89, 87, 86, 85, 84 degrees on the opposite end. And that just makes sense because it's the opposite end where the lugs are. Now, the heat that you're seeing right there in the picture is where it's plugged into that drop cord. And it's getting a little bit warm. Alright guys, so it's still running. I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed with it. You know, it doesn't seem that the inverter's staying nice and cool, but the cables are pretty warm. I would definitely upgrade the cables if you're planning on pushing this inverter. But all in all, I'm pretty impressed with it. Let me shut it off. Alright guys, so as you've seen a while ago, I used the thermal imaging camera to, you know, pretty much just show you all the hot spots, and definitely the hot spots were right here at the battery terminals, and then the terminals right there where it hooks up to the inverter. So that definitely showed me that the wires were not sufficient enough to pull that much of a constant power. Now I'd say if you probably ran it to, you know, 2,000 watts, that these wires would be fine. But if you go anything above that, I would just play it safe and go with some heavier gauge wire. So if you're interested in this wire, this is what I use. This is a 1/aught wire. It's from a company called New Concepts, and the spelling of the company's kind of weird. It's KNUKONCEPTZ. And it's I'll put a link down in the description. You can buy this stuff off of Amazon, but this wire is the best that I've ever seen. It's like I said, it's very flexible. This is the 1/aught, and it has 5,145 strands of wire. So it just makes it super conductive, and it's got a really thick jacket on there. It strips really easy, and you know, being able to put those tight bends in there, you know, sometimes when you're hooking this stuff up, you know, you need something that's real flexible, where like your welding cable and stuff like that, most of the time it's pretty stiff. So this is what I recommend. You use what you want, but if you're interested in it, check my affiliate link down below. And like I was saying before, you've seen what all the thermal camera did. If you're interested in the thermal camera, I've got it down below in the affiliate link. And this thing here is a lifesaver. I don't just use it for testing inverters. Literally, when I got the thing, I ran around the house for like an hour playing with it, because I was going around looking at all the hot spots where I was, you know, losing, electricity just from leaking in drafty windows and doors, and just, you know, hot spots around the house. And, you know, this is good if you've got a, you know, if you're not sure if you've got a good connection there at your breaker box. You can look at your breaker and see if one's getting hot. And this thing here can really save your butt. So, you know, if you're looking for a good tool to have, this is definitely one I recommend. And then the oscilloscope. This is one that I really like just because it has such a large screen on it, and it's doesn't have to be plugged in. It's got a rechargeable battery on the inside, and it comes with some nice probes and all that. So this is also linked in the description down below. And I gotta say, I'm very, very impressed with the SWI or SWI POWER power inverter. I put it through its paces. You guys seen it, tested the inverter, you know, with a load on it. It put out a nice clean sine wave, and the thing is really built well, and it shows. You've seen it pass with flying colors in the testing. Upgrade the wiring on here, you probably never have any problems out of this thing. Now, this is not a long-term test. I can't speak for long-term, but just from here to today, you can see that it put out over the 3,000 watts of power. All right, so I'm gonna wrap this up. I appreciate you guys watching to the very end. I know this is kind of long and drawn out, but you know, it's long and drawn out for us too. It does take us a lot of time to set all this stuff up and hook it up, test it and all this. So I'd really appreciate it if you guys would subscribe to my channel and give me a like. It really does help with the YouTube algorithms and all that. And you know, make sure you check out all the products that I've listed down in the Amazon. Make sure you check out all the products that I've listed down below in the description. And until next time, guys, I'll see you on the next one. Have a good one.